All right, hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. My name is Eric, and this is the other CEDH, where the C stands for casual. We are your one-stop shop for all things casual, kitchen table, Magic the Gathering. Thank you for joining me here today. So, what kind of thing is this know-nothing hack going to spout off about today? Well, today we're going to be doing a fun build that may be a little more on the advanced side for newer players, but it's a super cool 4-color build that has multiple win conditions, lots of cool artifact synergies, and is a very flexible deck that can either go wide with pumped artifact tokens to run over your opposition, or make its commander into an artifact-powered super weapon that will cut a bitch up if you let her get out of control. And she's also paired with a dude in Dimir colors that can enable all kinds of graveyard-centric Dimir dumb shit, because consuming aberration is a thing. That's right, everyone. It's the pair of partners that will persistently punish prospective players in your playgroup: Akiri, Line-Slinger and Silas Renn, Seeker Adept. That's right, we're doing 4-color artifacts here today. Interesting fact, Akiri and Silas were actually alternate commanders in the commander precon that was called Invent Superiority, which is an awesome name, and had Breya Ethereum Shaper at the helm. I should mention that Breya is not in this deck list as it stands right now, but she would be a great include, so feel free to put her in this deck. Breya can do all kinds of broken things, and in fact a lot of good deck builders can just sneeze the wrong way and figure out a way to go infinite with her, but that's not how we're building this deck. In short, the version we have built is going to be what I call a number of artifacts matters archetype. If you want to go for a quick kill, you can ramp and drop a lot of cheap artifacts, then use a number of artifacts that we have to pump Akiri and make her gigantic. We also run a lot of effects that make Akiri unblockable, and it's important to note that she also has First Strike and Vigilance, which means she's also great on defense, and even if you can't make her unblockable, if you get her big enough, she can essentially function as removal, since your opponents will need to block her for fear of that commander damage KO. And if she's at 10 or 11 power, she'll take out almost anything. Your opponent may have an Eldrazi, but that's a chance we're willing to take. If you can't get Akiri in for a quick commander damage KO, we also have a lot of artifact token generators and pump effects so that we can go wide with beefy flyers and win the game in the air as well. Our removal synergizes really well with a lot of our engines because they are all enter the battlefield or ETB based. Everything from card draw to token generation, it's all based on ETB triggers. So you can board wipe at just the right moment, then replay all your token generators and get your draw engines back aligned to bury your opponents in card advantage. It's important to note that we are in 4 colors, but for the purposes of this build we mainly built it blue because blue has a lot of our good artifact synergies. And guys, to be completely honest with you, the way that I built this deck, you won't play Silas Renn much, if at all. He's really only here to give us the colors that we need to really lean into the Artifacts Matters theme, but we did include all 4 colors to give us the flexibility that these commanders provide. As with all of our deck techs, we're going to break this deck down into 4 main categories: mana ramp, card draw, say it with me Dan, all the artifacts. And how are we going to win this game? So without further ado, let's get into it, shall we? Since both of our commanders care about artifacts, ramp was a no-brainer, so we're running a few of our signets such as Dimir, Orzhov, Boros, and Izzet. You could include the Azorius and Rakdos signets as well. I didn't have either of them handy and wanted to make room for a few other ways to fix your mana, but you could feel free to include those as well. Wanderer's Twig and Traveler's Amulet don't ramp you, but they are a great and cheap way to fix your mana, and having one of these will guarantee you a land drop if you don't have a land in your hand. Blinkmoth Urn is probably the most insane form of ramp in this deck. In everyone's pre-combat main phase of Blinkmoth Urn is untapped, which is important to note. Everyone gets a colorless mana for each artifact they control. This is going to help your opponent some, but being in an artifact deck, this is something we will be able to abuse way more than our opponents. Very solid include in this deck. Alloy Mirror is in here as well. 3 mana, taps for any 1 color, great for fixing. And finally, Pilgrim's Eye is a little cheaper, much worse. Solemn Simulacrum, for 3 mana, it finds a land directly into your hand. Hey, you know what I like doing? I like drawing cards. I can hear Dan right now. You know, if you put better cards in your deck, you wouldn't have to draw so many of them. Ah ha 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 ha, asshole. Um, anyway, how are we going to draw cards with this deck? We've included Joyra, Weatherlight Captain, and Artificer's Assistant, both of which care about the number of historic spells we cast, which, coincidentally enough, happen to be artifacts. Joyra will draw us a card anytime we play an artifact, and Artificer's Assistant will let us scry one with each artifact that we cast. Now, having both of these in play at the same time is particularly good because you can stack the triggers so that you scry before you draw, so that you can really filter through your deck and find exactly the card that you need. Riddlesmith will let us loot, that is, draw a card, then discard a card for each artifact spell we cast, and we can throw Mask of Riddles onto Akiri, in which he hits an opponent, we get to draw a card. Since we have quite a bit of ramp, we're also running some big X draw spells like Blue Sun Zenith and Stroke of Genius. Blue Sun Zenith is X and 3 blue, and Stroke of Genius is X plus 2 and a blue, and with the amount of mana this deck can pump out, you are guaranteed to have a full hand at all times. Blue Sun Zenith is nice too because it shuffles back into your library so you can use it over and over again. And now it's time to get into what this deck wants to do, which is create a ton of artifacts. That's why we have things like Mirror Battlesphere, which nets us 4 Mirror tokens whenever it comes into play, and Whirler Rogue, which gets us 2 Thopter tokens when it comes into play. Whirler Rogue is great in this deck because it lets you tap 2 untapped artifacts you control to make a creature unblockable. So use this to make Akiri unblockable when you have 12 artifacts, and that's like a cold boot in the ass. This is the sort of thing your opponents are going to have to remove. They may not think twice about it when you first drop it, but once you one-shot someone, the table's assholes will collectively clinch. Just great inclusion in this deck. Thopter Assembly can get you a small army in the blink of an eye. Even if you have 1 Thopter in play, it's still a 5/5 flyer, which isn't horrible. And Sharding Sphinx, I'll give you a second to laugh inappropriately at the name, is absolutely insane in this deck. I have this in my Brutaclad build, and in that build you make 10 copies of it, and then when you go to combat, all 10 of them connect, triggering each of the 10 Sphinxes 10 different times, and that gets you 100 Thopter tokens. Then the next turn you turn those 100 Thopters into 100 Sphinxes. Oh! In Brutaclad, this is just busted. But even in this deck, if you get a free attack on someone, even 5 creatures getting through means 5 more Thopters, which means 5 more power for Akiri. Very good card in this deck. Finally, Efficient Construction is an enchantment that nets you a 1/1 Thopter each time you play an artifact spell, and Loyal Apprentice is an overperformer in every deck I've ever put it in. Hasty by himself, and if you have your commander, he nets you a 1/1 Thopter as well. So we have all of these artifacts, but how are we going to win with them? Again, we have a few different options here, and this deck is really flexible. So let's take a look at how we're going to close out this game. An ideal scenario would be to play out your artifacts and get Akiri out so you can go for that easy commander damage KO. With a few mana rocks and something like a Mirror Battlesphere out, it's very easy for Akiri to get to 9 or 10 power, and that's a 2-shot kill in most cases. Now, we are running some equipment to help her get through, things like Whisper Silk Cloak and Prowler's Helm. Whisper Silk Cloak will give her unblockable, as well as Shroud. Shroud can hurt us in some cases, so you may have to do a bit of dance with the Whisper Silk Cloak, and Prowler's Helm makes it so that she can only be blocked by walls. We're also running Fire Shrieker to give her double strike, anything more than 11 power, and if you can make her unblockable with Fire Shrieker, it's just straight lights out for someone. Now, say you don't draw into a way to make Akiri unblockable, or your Voltron plan goes sideways for whatever reason, you're going to have a backup plan. So our backup plan includes going wide with our artifact tokens and pumping them with things like Chief of the Foundry and Master of Ethereum, both pumping our artifact creatures +1/+1. Having both of these in play will turn your 10 Thopter tokens into a near lethal scenario, and Jorkadine the Prevailer is the best anthem by far, giving all your creatures +3/+0 on the condition that you have 3 or more artifacts, which this deck has no problem doing. Ruination Guide is a surprising budget gem for this deck, giving our colorless creatures +1/+0, and the Antiquities War will turn every artifact we have into a monster, provided you can get it to that 3rd lore counter. Now, sagas are really hit and miss in this format, but I'm willing to bet that your opponents are going to find a much juicier target for their removal spells than this. On the other hand, if you have 20 artifacts and they realize you're just going to win with this may not get a chance to stick. So it's kind of high variance, but it's a good option for this deck. Now that we've broken down the entire deck, let's go over the mana base. Naya, Jund, Esper, and Grixis Panorama are all great ways to fix your mana, letting you tap one and sack them to go and get the right land for the situation at hand. Ancient Den and Seat of the Synod are both artifact lands that tap for blue or white mana and increase your artifact count as well. Very solid in this deck. Terramorphic Expanse and Terminal Moraine are also great budget fetches that will find us the right color basic land, and we just happen to have an extra command tower, so we threw it in this deck as well. Finally, we're going to be running 22 basic lands. 3 of those are going to be swamps, 5 are going to be plains, 4 are going to be mountains, and 10 of those are going to be islands. And now let's talk turkey. How much is this deck going to set you back? Going by Card Kingdom near mint price, as we always do, the deck comes in at $66.24. Not too bad at all. Now keep in mind that Silas by himself is around $6. Akiri is much cheaper than that, but just something to be aware of. Stroke of Genius and Blue Sun Zenith are both close to $3. They're really great in this deck given the amount of ramp we have, but if you want to save money, you can find some different sources of draw for this deck if you want to save a little bit of cash. Evacuation is also up there in terms of budget cards. It's pretty handy here because, as I said, all our engines are ETB or enter the battlefield base, so it's a really solid tempo blowout. I'm sure you can find much cheaper board wipes for this deck if you really need to. Now, moving on to our alternate build pass and upgrades. Dan says he really likes this portion of the show, so I always really like doing this segment. Now, being in 4 colors, you have a lot of options at your disposal, and one of those options, since you're in red and white, is to make this a Sun Forger build. Yes, since you're in 4 colors, there's all kinds of cool things that you can fetch with Sun Forger, like your Vampiric Tutor, or a Mystical Tutor, Imperial Seal if you play with that kind of budget, and of course, being in white, you can tutor for Teferi's Protection. Scryfall says that TCG Player has a copy of this for $40.78, and somewhere between May and June of last year, this was sitting at $58.80, which was the highest that it ever got at that particular point. I mean, it's worth every penny and an amazing card. If you want to make a Sun Forger build of this, put Teferi's Protection in this deck and you'll get mad respect the next time your opponent tries to swing in with Krenko and his 96 tokens at you. You could also turn this into a really grindy control style artifact build. Now, we have played the deck extensively. The wife and I really put this through its paces, and I have to say that the deck is very toolboxy. Rachel piloted Akiri because I felt it was a little more her style, make a bunch of pumped artifact tokens, swing in, just crush everybody that way. She had a play where she used Saheeli's Artistry to copy Mirror Battlesphere twice and had Jorkadeen out. Oh, holy shit balls, did that hurt. She had plenty of card draw to get more and more gas. The deck ramps very nicely. And between Executioner's Capsule and Dispeller's Capsule being recurable with Silas Renn, you have a lot of good ways to control the board. I originally had a lot of the big white creature wraths like End Hostilities and Fumigate, things like that. I took those out of the deck because they actually hurt me just as much as they did everybody else. So I tweaked the removal a little bit to include your big blue mass bounce spells like Evacuation, Etherize, and River's Rebuke. All 3 of these are great ways to slow down the game and work really well with our draw engines like Joyra, Weatherlight Captain, and Riddlesmith. Blue bounce spells really help to regulate the tempo of a game and just seemed to be a natural fit for this deck since we're running a lot of blue for our artifact synergies anyway. Anyway, I'm rambling because I just really love this deck. But going back to a hard control style build, you could certainly run things like your Nev's Disc and Oblivion Stone as a sort of standby oh shit button. And you could even combo that with things like Soul Phyrexia and Blink Moth Urn, in which you use the urn to generate enough mana to activate Soul Phyrexia so that when you pop the disc, all your stuff lives, and you 1 mana just kind of wrath the board every turn. Yeah, it's a super dick move, but it's the sort of thing you can do with this deck. One final way you could build this would be to include some of the cool white equipment synergies that, as far as I can tell, have kind of been sprinkled in throughout the game's history, like Stone Hewer Giant from Warning Tide and Open the Armory from Shadows over Innistrad. Pure Steel Paladin that we got out of New Phyrexia would be great in this deck. Run a lot of sweet equipment and really lean hard into the Voltron aspects of these colors. Or if you're not looking to build this super competitive, you could build around some of just the lore from Magic's history, namely anything in and around the Battle for Zendikar set, just anything within that timeline and era of Magic history, around the time of the story that Nihiri and Soren had that total pissing contest with one another that led to Soren imprisoning her in the Hell Vault, and then people just quit paying attention to the shit they needed to pay attention to. And then the Eldrazi break free just rolled into Zendikar and started fucking everybody's day up. Nihiri, goes back to Zendikar, sees the Eldrazi going all, Woodstock 99 on the place, essentially telling Soren, you're a dead man, and proceeds to just go full on, balls out, bath salts induced demo derby shit show over all of Innistrad as payback to Soren for imprisoning her and letting the Eldrazi just, kind of walk right out the doggy door. Guys, you want to pay tribute to a great piece of Magic lore and story? Build that deck. Put Nihiri in it. Put Soren in it. What does Soren have to do with artifacts? I don't know, but if you're going with lore, just put him in here. Alright guys, I think I've rambled on enough. Thanks for sitting through this deck tech. This deck was a ton of fun to build. It's a ton of fun to play. It is by no means competitive, but if you want a diverse 4-color deck that has a lot of cool artifact synergies and can just really go full on ape shit in combat situations, then give this deck a shot. I think you're really going to like it. Just a quick note, I did mention in our last video I was a little unsure about the mana base, but guys, it's fine. It works perfectly. In all the games we've played, we've never had a problem with getting the quantity or quality of mana that was needed to make the deck function. Again, this list is by no means competitive, so if you're in a faster meta, you may want to speed the mana base up a bit, but it functions beautifully as it is if you are in a little bit slower meta. Also, shout out to the few new subscribers that we have and all the old subscribers that keep coming back. You guys, I know this channel doesn't have a lot of subscribers and we don't have a ton of views, but to all you guys who keep coming back and listening to my long-winded bullshit, thank you guys so much. I love and cherish every single one of you guys. As we've said before, feel free to comment, subscribe, and smash that like button. Once again, we're on Facebook, we're on Twitter. Drop in, say hello. Again, guys, tell me the sorts of things you want me to cover on this channel. I'm more than happy to answer you guys' questions, talk brews, talk deck ideas, just shoot the shit relating to all things Commander. Once again, my name is Eric, this is the other CEDH, and we will see you guys next time.